moment is here, you can stop your search. It's Comics by Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch, and I've got 2 points here I want to make, and I think they're mildly related. I think one is more of a solution, and the other is more of an observation. So let's get to the observation first, and I'll explain kind of the background behind some of this. So as I'm packing up the house and just doing a lot of kind of in and out of a room, on the TV is playing the Netflix live-action Cowboy Bebop. Now I got an early look at the series for the first, I don't remember now at this point, it was 3 or 4 handful of episodes, the first handful of episodes. So I'm letting the rest of them go out, just more or less kind of curious how it all wraps up. And I don't enjoy it. Now, some people do. I'm sure some of you listening to this right now enjoyed it, and that's fine. Again, the policy of this show, which I feel like an idiot having to continue to repeat this, because I would love it if everybody just absorbed it kind of in their own minds. But if you enjoy something, I'm happy for you. I mean, good Lord, you're spending your money and your time on something. If you're I hope you're having a good time with it. I really do. I don't need to like it for you to like it. I'm assuming you're a grown adult, or maybe even a kid who is more or less mature. I mean, my 8-year-old understands that the neighbor likes Paw Patrol. She can't stand Paw Patrol, and but she doesn't think my neighbor's a moron or hater, or continuously goes over there and shouts at her for liking Paw Patrol. It's just like, I don't watch TV over there because I don't like that stupid show. Okay, cool. That makes sense. That's how reasonable people, even children, are. Not so much on the internet, but there you go. But I didn't like the show, and I did a video talking about the reasons why. It really, seeing the rest of the episodes, it pretty much never changes from my original assessment, which is, number 1, it looks cheap. Number 2, the dialogue is just bad. I mean, just the dialogue feels very forced. My wife's kind of walking in and out of the room as well, doing packing, and she comments, she's like, it feels like the people are like reading their lines, like in a school play, but they are seeing them for the first time. That's how it's coming across. And I think that was pretty much dead on of where it was at. And I make the comment, and she goes, why are you watching this anyway? And I go, I think I'm being witty. I go, well, there's some sick pleasure in watching a series that you more or less liked get molested. And she goes, so you're telling me you like watching things get molested? And it just goes to prove that my wife is smarter and quicker at humor than I am. But what strikes me, all these articles are now coming out talking about how Cowboy Bebop fixed many of the problematic elements of the cartoon. And when they say problematic, they're really referring to a handful of one of the transgender, a character who's now transgender, who in the show really wasn't, was kind of forced to take these hormones and experimental drugs that made her that way. It really wasn't a transgender character in the original series, and in the Netflix show it is. And that's a bit character in Netflix show, and it doesn't, the character is more or less has no real point to the show. You could have replaced that character with a robot, or just even not have the character in that show at all, and you would have been about the same. And they also mean like the handling of Faye Valentine, to kind of desexualize her a little bit, do some things kind of with anyway, I'm trying to do this without spoiling. But I notice that when I see these, and this is the observation part, when I see these articles that talk about fixing problematic things, my question is always, who is this truly for? Who are you fixing it for? And for people who are fans of the original series, people who enjoy it, when there's a remake, they generally want to see things, kept consistent, particularly when it's not so much a remake, but a live action adaptation. When you're taking an animation and you're turning it into live action, they generally want to see the things honored. And I think going from animation to live action is different from doing a remake. You're doing more of a translation at that point. It's kind of a dub. You see some of the same comments come out when some Funimation or Crunchyroll stuff is dubbed, and it's like, well, we fixed some of the problematic elements through the dub, meaning they basically changed the original words to something more, in theory, palatable. And I'm not in favor of that. I think you should leave it the way it is. And if it's problematic, you live with it, whatever problematic exactly means. And because problematic is this huge umbrella that covers a ton of things. As an example, you go back to comic books and you get Captain Marvel. I'm talking about the Shazam version of Captain Marvel. Captain Marvel had a little buddy that for some of the very early comics would run around with him. And he was drawn in a super stereotypical racist, black image. It just didn't even look correct with the other characters running around. It was not, it's something that if you drew and put out in a comic today, it would be like immediate, like, oh, hell no. It wouldn't work. And so, do I think that if they're going to, bring that character forward in Shazam comics, that they should draw the character in the same way? No, of course not. Of course you update that character. If you're going to take a reprint of that comic, should you go back and should you redraw all those panels of characters in? No, you shouldn't do that either, because the original art is the original art. Does it make you uncomfortable? It might, but you got to kind of live with that discomfort. That's kind of what life and living is. Things that happened in our past that you had no control over, may make you uncomfortable, and that's you got to live with it. But when they say they've changed problematic elements and elements from the last like 10 to 20 years, and they're going to update those problematic elements, who is that for exactly? Because if you notice, it gets a lot of like, oh, thank goodness, on Twitter. People who are happy saying, oh, I'm glad those problematic elements are getting updated. But they don't seem to translate to viewers of the show. It feels like they're doing that for an audience that isn't an audience for the show they're making. The people who are really thrilled that these elements are getting changed, they're not going to buy or consume the product. You see this with comics all the time. When you see updates or you see changes or like, we're going to fix this character, and you see a lot of like, yes, on Twitter, a lot of trending likes and everything else, but then you see the sales of the comic and the comic fails and fails hard. So who is this being fixed for exactly? It's being fixed for a phantom group of people who you want to kind of applaud you, but really you should, in theory, be hoping those people are going to show up and actually watch, buy, consume the product. Cowboy Bebop is a bit of an interesting case because it is a Netflix show, and so it's done well. I mean, it showed up on charts, but in fairness, so did things like Jupiter's Legacy and other shows that showed up on the same charts and the same placement, and then didn't get renewed or ultimately was determined it's not a success. We don't know how Cowboy Bebop will fit, but given the very adverse fan reaction and the very rapid all the people complaining are hateful trolls, I really doubt Netflix is going to come out and say, well, we're not going to renew it. It's not successful. They'll be afraid of quote unquote, giving that problematic audience a win. But will it get a second season? I mean, probably. A lot of stuff gets a second season on Netflix. She-Ra got several seasons on Netflix, and then it kind of ended. And, that's where it feels like this is headed as well. But I said there were 2 points, and here comes the second. And this is more of kind of what I think could be a solution to some of this, but also a frustration I have, which is if you spend some time in Japan or Korea or even Europe, you'll notice that the feelings that people have toward animation are different. Adults can watch animation, and it's not a big deal. There's no stigma against it. It's not like, oh, that's a cartoon, that's for kids. Particularly in Japan, I mean, you will see salarymen, you'll see people on the train in their suits reading manga. It is not the stigma of grown-ups reading comics or watching a cartoon is not there. People got very excited with anime. There's an anime called Your Name, which was released in 2016 in Japan. That movie, that anime film is amazing. That's one of the best films I've ever seen. The animation is off the charts. If you haven't heard of it, Your Name, go check it out. I mean, again, you could love or hate the story. It's kind of a sci-fi, semi-romantic comedy, but not really. That'd be a terrible way to describe it. But hell, if it's not your thing from a subject matter point of view, turn off the volume and just stare at the screen. It literally is one of the most awesome looking shows you've ever seen. Right now, go onto your Apple TV or YouTube or whatever and pull up the trailer for that thing. It's crazy. It's a great film. Adults went to that thing like mad. It made a ton of money in Japan, mainly from grown-ups. The movie wasn't, it wasn't edgy or made to kind of appeal to grown-ups through kind of random silliness, it could be enjoyed pretty much by everyone. It featured some dating kind of stuff, but nothing that would be too awkward for kids. They might get bored. But in the US, there is a stigma against animation. And I think this holds us back in a major way. You look at Cowboy Bebop. Why is it that Netflix didn't just, present the original show? Or why wouldn't they, if they really felt the need to reanimate it because, it didn't look quite right, why not just reanimate the show? Put it out on animation. Why is it that comic books, when they go to animate them, they feel compelled to either make them super edgy, like the Killing Joke had to insert all this other very weird stuff into it in order to try and really prove it was for adults, or they basically pawn it all off as kid stuff. I remember talking to one of the lead animators or the production designers at Pixar that I met many years ago. This was in Toy Story 2 was coming out, so it's very early in their run. And they talked about some of the frustration of, even though we've done these films, even though we have more in the can, they were preparing to do Finding Nemo, I think. And they're like, we put out these movies, and yet still we're kid stuff. And here's kind of one of the frustrations of the relationship with Disney was it's pigeonholing us as kid stuff, even though we're creating art that adults should be able to go and enjoy and not be ashamed of. It's that not be ashamed of piece that I think is particularly screwed up in the US. And it does bleed into comics. There's a stigma. They're for collectors, they're for kids. And simply not true. And if you look at other countries, they don't have this problem. If you go to Japan, they don't have this problem. Animation, manga, that's all out there, no problem. Here in the US, we feel compelled to say it's not good enough. If it's animation, it's not good enough for adults. So we have to update it. We have to change it. We have to convert it. We have to make it live action, or the adults won't go for it. And as long as we're converting it to live action, we might as well fix some of those problematic things. We might as well update it to make it more appropriate, because some of those things are cringy. I can't believe they're in a cartoon. Yeah, we need to update this stuff, make it more inclusive. If we had more tolerance and acceptance for animation, you would see more of the comics adapted just as they are. Again, something that's worked really well for manga right now. You get books like Demon Slayer, you get books like My Hero Academia, and the very direct one-to-one translation of the manga to the anime is helping both products a lot. It helps sell the manga, it helps sell the anime. It's a very compelling, powerful benefit that it has. US comics could do the exact same thing. There is no reason why they can't. You telling me they can't do a regular comic series and fall behind it with a even reasonably well done animation that translates the book one-to-one? We've seen how that works. You see how that works in Korea and Japan and other places. It works great. Why not do it here? Why not try it out anywhere? Nobody is trying it out. Why? Well, I guess I take it back. Invincible is kind of giving it a shot right now. It's changing some things too, but it's attempting to kind of convert it. Even there, it's straying pretty far from the book. Why? It's a peculiar thing about the U.S. that we have this mentality around how animation should work, and it's just wrong. And if we accepted it more, it would get translated less. I think there would be far less motivation to quote unquote update it, so it's less problematic. It would just be the value would be in creating a one-to-one connection between the two. That, as we've seen, creates profit, is better for business, is better for what people enjoy, and frankly, easier. Anyway, just a perspective from this show and everything else. I do, it does irk me. I see these articles of like, this show fixed necessary problematic things. Really? Were they necessary? I mean, again, for who? Who's being helped here? It's not the show. It's not the audience. Is there anyone out there who was like, well, we changed Faye Valentine's way she views men and women from the anime to the live action show, and now it's better. But is it? Yeah. Thanks for listening.